What if I told you that this West Virginia men's basketball team that has 8 games to go in the regular season is either going to live by the 3 or die by the 3 down the stretch? This is a team that's got NCAA Tournament aspirations, but they've got some work to do. And we're going to talk to you about the Mountaineers' three-point shooting, what it's looked like so far this season. We broke down every stat you might be able to think of, what it's been like at home, what they've shot it like on the road, what they've shot it like in Big 12 play, in wins, in losses, all of the above, the whole 9 yards. West Virginia three-point shooting, special edition episode of Mountaineer Moment, what it's looked like this season, what it's going to be an indication of things to come as you close out the season right here on Mountaineer Moment. Stick around. This is the Mountaineer Moment, your source for all things West Virginia football and basketball. From pregame to postgame coverage and breaking news, we've got you covered. Let's go. Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of Mountaineer Moment. My name's Troy. I am your host, and this is your source for all things West Virginia football and basketball. As you know or might not know, but here on Mountaineer Moment, what we like to do throughout the basketball season is give you an opponent preview and a post-game reaction and analysis every single game that the Mountaineers have. So we give you a preview. For example, an upcoming episode is going to be a preview of the Texas Tech Red Raiders that are coming to Morgantown for a matchup on Sunday afternoon. And then right after the game, we're going to follow that up as quickly as we can to get it out there, a post-game reaction and analysis. And we do that every basketball game throughout the season. And occasionally, throughout basketball season, we'll have some special edition episodes to give you some stuff. And in this case, that's one of those. This episode is specifically talking about West Virginia's three-point shooting, what it's looked like this season, what it needs to look like moving forward, and just putting things in perspective with the road ahead and the big picture and what this team desires to get to and just how important three-point shooting is going to be to them reaching that goal. And so, again, lots of stats I'm going to throw at you, lots of numbers I'm going to give you here. But before we get into that, why don't you go ahead and hit that subscribe button for us? YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, whatever platform you are on, wherever you're watching or listening, hit that subscribe button for us. And, we would love for you to be in the know. And we have new content coming your way. And then follow us on X at Ear Moment, EER Moment, Ear Moment on X. We usually post when we have new content coming too with our graphics and let you know when a new episode has just been released. And then if you want to get in touch with me, mountaineermoment@gmail.com. You can send us an email, and we would love to interact with you in that way. Love interacting with the folks in the comment section on YouTube, so keep that going. And just know that I am greatly appreciative of that, all right? And so without further ado, we're going to talk about West Virginia's three-point shooting. I'm going to throw a lot of numbers at you. I did a lot of research on this just to let you know what this team has looked like from beyond the arc this season. And, when they shoot a certain way, sometimes it results in a certain thing, right? There's some patterns that you might pick up on over the course of this episode, whether it's shooting at home or away from home, what that looks like. They're shooting in Big 12 play, some notable trends. And, again, big picture road ahead for the Mountaineers. So I'm going to give you a few numbers. I'm going to give you a lot of numbers, but a few kind of quick observations from my research, breaking it down, West Virginia beyond the arc this season. So they've played 23 games, as we know, have the Mountaineers. They currently sit at 15-8 on the season and 6-4 in Big 12 conference play. A big one coming up on Sunday afternoon when they play host to Texas Tech. Again, come back for that episode previewing that action, and then a post-game reaction and analysis right here on Mountaineer Moment that we'll give you really, really soon, obviously, with that game being this weekend. But a few things, a few observations real quick relating to the Mountaineers' three-point shooting. So, one, in 11 of the Mountaineers' 23 games this season. So non-conference play, conference play, all of it in between, on the road, neutral site, at home. In 11 of 23 games this season, they have shot the ball under 30% from three in games. And 6 of those times have been in Big 12 play. And as we know, That has been a trend over the course of the last 4 games for the Mountaineers. 4 straight games shooting under 30%, and they are 2-2 in those games. So almost 50% of the time, they are shooting less than 30% from 3. Not ideal. Now, you jump it up just a tad, just a touch, right? Over when they shoot over 35%, they are 8-3 in those games, right? So there's only been one game. In other words, there's only been one game where they've shot between 30 and 35%. Otherwise, there's 11 games below 30%, and there's 11 games above 35%, and the Mountaineers are 8-3 in those games. You move that up just another notch. Again, lots of stats, lots of numbers, lots of percentages, but it makes sense. West Virginia has shot over 40% from 3 in 7 games this season, and they are 6-1 in those contests. The lone loss came in that double overtime game to Ohio State, where West Virginia offense wasn't the problem. They shot at 46% from 3 in that game, and that's their only loss when they have been above 40% this season. Again, they've done that 7 times in 23 games thus far. Another interesting note, well over half, so 15 times on the season, West Virginia has made 7 or more threes, including 6 times in Big 12 play, and they are 11-4 in those games. So 11 wins, 4 losses when you make 7 or more threes, and they are 4-2 in Big 12 play based on those numbers. Okay, so those are you think that's a lot of numbers and stats. That's just the beginning of this thing, okay? So we're going to break it down even further. But obviously, over those like quick observations for this Mountaineer team, and I'm not sitting here saying like this is, to be honest with you, before I entered into this, I thought the numbers might be a little more staggering as far as like wins and losses. Like maybe they shoot 43% in wins, but in losses they're shooting 23%. The numbers aren't that drastically different, but there are trends. And going 6-1 when you shoot it over 40%, and your lone loss being in a double overtime game to Ohio State, right? Like that's a pretty good indication that this team, when they shoot it well, they're tough to beat. We know what this offense consists of. We know it's consisted of a lot of inconsistency. But Honor Huff, Treysen Eaglestaff, 2 guys that can really, really fill it up. They can shoot it a lot and shoot it well. When those guys get going, right? Because I can guarantee you in those 7 games, those guys were leading contributors. Well, you're 6-1 in games when you shoot it over 40%. And when you make 7 or more threes, you sit at 11-4, including 4-2 in Big 12 play. And 7 threes isn't, an unattainable number. In fact, for the quality of shooters on this team, that you should be able to get there just based on the 2 guys that I just mentioned alone. All right. So we'll break it down even more because I was really intrigued by the fact that, West Virginia obviously has been a different team at home this season. Just 1 loss coming last weekend against Baylor. And, before that, they were perfect. Now they played a lot of really easy games at home in the non-conference slate, and they, had some difficult losses away from Hope Coliseum and neutral site games. And so we'll talk to that too. But West Virginia is a better 3-point shooting team at home. They're a better 3-point shooting team in wins, and specifically in Big 12 wins compared to their losses. And these numbers are going to back that up. Now, again, I'm not sitting here saying it's 43% to 23%, but there are some notable differences here as I run through these numbers for you too. So at home this season, all season long, non-conference game from Mount St. Mary's all the way up until that Baylor game at home, West Virginia is shooting 36.4% from 3. 36.4% from 3 at home this season, 118 out of 324. Now, away from Hope Coliseum, we know West Virginia has won 2 games away from home, 2 true road games. They were 0-4 on neutral site courts this season with losses to Clemson, Xavier, Wake Forest, and Ohio State. Now, including those and including any game you went on the road in Big 12 play, before this upcoming matchup with Texas Tech. So obviously all these numbers are based on, West Virginia's most recent game being on the road against Cincinnati and that come from behind win. But away from Hope Coliseum in Morgantown, that number trends downward. They're at 33% from three, 72 out of 215 on the season away from Hope Coliseum. So tricks down, 3.5% away from home. Not a major difference, but a difference nonetheless. You break that down even further. What does this team look like at home in Big 12 play and on the road in Big 12 play? Well, at home, they're right at 35% shooting. And away from home, they're just a tick lower, 33.5% shooting. So not a major difference there, but I'm going to give you all the numbers that I got based on this research. So that's home and away in the Big 12, right? So home and away, total 36%, 33%. Then just home and away Big 12, you're 35% at home and 33.5% on the road. Now, on the whole season, collectively, in wins that West Virginia has, so in their what is it? What did I just say? 15 wins. They're 15-8. In their 15 wins so far this season, they are shooting it at 37% from beyond the arc, and that's obviously the biggest number we've said so far. 37% from beyond the arc in wins. In losses, so in their 8 losses, they are at 31.7%. So almost 6% lower in their losses, and those numbers are similar in Big 12 play, but a full 7% difference in Big 12 wins and Big 12 losses. So West Virginia has won 6 Big 12 games. They are shooting it at 37% in those wins. And in those losses, they are shooting at just 30% in those 4 losses. And they're 27 for 90 in those games. So, 22, 23 3-point attempts per game in those ones, in those 4 losses. So, some interesting things right there. And again, it's I would bet that most teams are shooting better from beyond the arc in games that they win versus games that they lose. Most teams are probably shooting better at home than they are on the road. But, as we're in, obviously, over the halfway point now in Big 12 play, through 10 games, you're 6-4. And in those games that you win, including 2 road wins over Arizona State and Cincinnati most recently, you're shooting it at 37%. And in your losses, there's 4 of them. 3 of them came on the road to Final Four caliber teams. Another one, came on the road as well to who else? Who in the world? Oh, no, that other one was at home against Baylor, right? So 3 road losses in the Big 12 against really, really good teams, and then a home loss against Baylor. But in those 4 losses, you're shooting it at just 30%. And overall, over the course of the last 4 games, your numbers are trending downward over the last 4 games. So this was one of the stats that made me want to do a deeper dive on the course of the entire season. So, West Virginia, obviously, 4 straight games in which they've scored in the 50s against Arizona State. Arizona, Kansas State. So the back half of that Arizona trip against the number 1 Wildcats, against Kansas State, against Baylor, and against Cincinnati. You've gone 2-2. Your 2 wins have come with identical scores, 59-54. And over the course of those 4 games, including 2 wins, you're shooting it at 28% from 3. Needless to say, I would say you're fortunate to have 2 wins. If you watch that Cincinnati game, you're down 14 in the second half. Nothing's going. Honor Huff comes alive. He sparks you. You get the win. There's a little more to it than that. I get it. But you're shooting 28% over the last 4 games. And somehow, some way, you're keeping your head above water a little bit here, because that loss would have been disastrous for your NCAA tournament resume. Fortunately, you leave Cincinnati with the win, including a sweep over the Bearcats. Now, one of the things that's kind of puts these numbers, at least for me, puts them in perspective a little bit more, is when you compare it to the rest of the Big 12 on the whole. So I mentioned West Virginia is shooting it at 35%. On the whole, grand scheme, everything, wins, losses, home, away, neutral site, they're shooting it at 35.3% from beyond the arc, and that ranks them 11th out of 16 teams in the Big 12. So obviously their wins, that's a higher number. Their losses, that's a lower number. But to put things in perspective a little bit more, so if you just take their wins, which is at 37% on the season and 37% in Big 12 play. But let's just go with that one. Their 6 wins in conference play, 37%. Now, again, there's a logjam of teams, and you might be like, it's not a big deal to go from 35% to 38%. And it's, I agree with that. But just to show you the numbers and how it works, if West Virginia, in their wins, you take that 37% number, that would put them at the 4th best three-point shooting team in the Big 12 percentage-wise. Now, the opposite of that's true. In their 4 losses, they're shooting it at 30%. Over the course of the last 4 games, including 2 wins, they're shooting it at 28%. Whether it's 30% or 28%, that number would put you at the bottom of the barrel in the Big 12. Last out of 16 teams, you're below TCU and Cincinnati. Cincinnati's at 30.4%. You're below them in your losses in the Big 12, your 4 losses this season, and over the course of your last 4 games where you're shooting 28%. So that's significant. That's significant. In wins, you're shooting like a top team in the Big 12, and in losses, you're shooting like the worst team in the Big 12. Right? Again, while I expected, personally, honestly, I expected like a, maybe a larger gap or something more eye-popping out of these numbers. However, that's an interesting stat in and of itself. Compared to the rest of the Big 12, in wins, you're pretty good, and in losses, you're the worst in the conference. So, as you play this forward and the road ahead for West Virginia, and we're obviously going to talk about this a lot, especially if you keep winning games and are able to stack some wins, are able to make some noise, are able to inch closer toward that bubble and in that conversation as you head toward March. West Virginia has 8 games left. 2 of those come against teams that are currently ranked. You got 2 against UCF, who's probably going to be ranked. The Texas Tech and BYU teams that are ranked right now, you get them at home. Again, Texas Tech's real soon. If you're watching this, that episode might already be out, so go check that episode out, previewing that game. But you got 8 games left, and you're at 15 wins. What's the magic number for teams in the Big 12? I don't know. Some people say 20. Some people say because of West Virginia's non-conference resume and what the teams looked like so far this season, and they got 1 win over a ranked team in Kansas. Now, there's still some opportunities out there. Some people say 20 is not enough. Is 21 enough? Is 22 enough? Like, what is right? They're not going to have to, I don't think they're going to have to go 7-1 down the stretch to get an NCAA tournament berth, but is it 20? Is it 21? Or, yeah. I don't think it's 19, right? I don't think 4-4 is going to get you in because you're not in right now, and you're 6-4 in conference. But obviously we talked about it after the Cincinnati game. You control your own destiny because, just like a lot of teams do right now. Of course, everybody controls their own destiny when it comes to conference tournament. But I don't know what the magic number is. Myself and Paul, Mountaineer Paul, Locked On West Virginia, talked about it like, okay, well, let's say you get to 19 wins, and your wins are Texas Tech, BYU, and let's just say you beat UCF twice to get to 19 wins. You lose all these other ones. You lose to Utah, you lose to TCU, you lose to Oklahoma State, you lose to K-State. Do you get in? Or let's say you get to 20 wins, but your wins are over Utah and TCU and Oklahoma State and Kansas State and maybe 1 against UCF, right? That's 5. You'd go 5-3 down the stretch, but you played 2, maybe 3 ranked opponents, and you only won 1 of them. You didn't beat Texas Tech. You didn't beat BYU at home. Where's that put you? And that's a question none of us can answer at this moment, but what West Virginia needs to do is start winning games. And it started with Cincinnati, but you got to keep that thing rolling after that loss to Baylor. You absolutely have to keep this thing going in order to make yourself relevant, in order to insert yourself into that conversation. And as we've looked at on this episode, what number did I say? Episode 143 of Mountaineer Moment, West Virginia's three-point shooting over the course of the next 8 games is going to play a factor. Specifically, the shooting of Treysen Eaglestaff and Honor Huff. And I don't think it would be right for us to give all these numbers and stats relating to three-point shooting and not talk about these two guys specifically. Honor Huff is shooting at over 37% this year on 9.5 attempts per game. So I'll just give you some of his numbers real quick as of late. He had 3 threes in that second half against Cincinnati. He made 5 out of 12 against K-State. His worst game of the season came in that home loss to Baylor, a 1 for 13 performance, 1 for 9 from 3. But over the course of Big 12 play, he's had some really solid performances. 9 threes against Cincinnati over the course of the 2 matchups with them. Again, 5 against K-State, 4 against Kansas. Aside from that K-State game and the Cincinnati game recently, he did have a little bit of a drought. Again, 1 for 9 against Baylor, 2 for 9 against Arizona, 2 for 8 against Arizona State, 2 for 7, 2 for 9, 1 for 8 against Iowa State way back when, right? He's had games that weren't stellar by any means, but the senior from Brooklyn is averaging nearly 16 points a game for the Mountaineers and really engineered that comeback win over Cincinnati that this team so desperately needed. Treysen Eaglestaff, a guy that's over double figures, scoring in over 5 attempts from 3 per game. Real quick, because again, they haven't shot it well as a team over the last 4 games, but Eaglestaff is, 7 for 22 from 3, so just shy of about 30% or so. 3 for 5 performance against Baylor. That obviously was not enough. He made 6 threes in that win in 38 minutes against Arizona State, 23 points. Maybe his best game of the season for Treysen Eaglestaff. But, these are 2 guys that you're relying on heavily. And we said it earlier. When you make 7 or more threes, this is an 11-4 team and 4-2 in conference play. Well, you need both those guys to give you a few a game, especially this Sunday against Texas Tech. This will be pivotal. 3-point shooting, we're going to talk more about this in that game preview between West Virginia and Texas Tech, because Texas Tech's got a couple guys that can really shoot the lights out, and sometimes West Virginia's defense struggles. So if you want to hear more of my thoughts on this Texas Tech Red Raiders offense and what they bring to the table and why the three-point line, guarding the three-point line for both teams is going to be absolutely massive, a massive category to watch for in that game, you can move on over to that episode, West Virginia versus Texas Tech game preview, Coal Rush in Morgantown Sunday afternoon, and we'll have you covered pregame and postgame coverage for that one. So we'll see you then. Let's go Mountaineers, and for episode 143 of Mountaineer Moment, my name's Troy, and we'll see you next time.